Hi, I'm Mary Lyons, the Wealth Woman.
I'm Eric Alexander with Benchmark Income Group.
Welcome to the Big Wealth Podcast. Today, we have a very special guest, one of my favorite people, KJ Martin, the queen of all things health insurance.
I'm not sure if I'd call me the queen, but okay.
You'll take it.
I have to. There's like, you have a superpower, right? So I got to make sure we allocate that somewhere here.
Right.
I feel like I have a crown.
Yeah. Well, I always think of healthcare ever since I've been part of that system. When I first started having a job and everything else, I always thought of it as this thing that I just have to do and hold my nose and get it knocked out. And then it's the thing that I got to check off and get back on. So I don't even sort of being close to the industry. I got to tell you, I don't pay attention to much of it unless there's something blowing up. But my guess is it's changing, it's evolving, but I don't even know in what direction.
You know, as a health insurance broker, I get that a lot. So most people are used to traditional options for their group.
Right.
And they get given a set of options and they think that that's the only option that they have. And in fact, many times if I review those plans with the policyholder, potential policyholder, and we go through the options and take a look at their needs and what they really want to do and how they use their health insurance, we can often find more affordable solutions for them.
Even inside of a group plan?
Even inside of a group plan. Yep. In fact, I have a lot of parents that bring me their kids, you know, they just started working. And so they'll bring me their policies and say, hey, can you take a look at this and kind of tell me, is this good or bad? And so I'll help them with the education process and knowing what deductibles, what copays, what it's really going to mean to them in terms of their out-of-pocket costs.
And so do you find that like one member of a household will be on their group plan and maybe, you know, the spouse and the kids will be on a different one, or they'll do, you know, them plus the spouse and the kids are on a different plan?
So oftentimes people think that when they have group insurance that everybody has to be on the same plan. And oftentimes, if again, you take a look at each family member and how they use their health insurance, you can often customize a solution that works much better for the family versus grouping them all into the same plan. I find with teachers and group plans, oftentimes it's not affordable for the spouse and the children to be on the employee's plan because remember that the carriers are looking for they're contributing to the employee only. They're not typically, unless it's a big group, or a big company, they're not typically looking to contribute to the spouse and the children. It's very, very rare to see today. And the contribution amount is typically 50% of the employee's plan. So it's still not a whole lot. And if they've picked very expensive plans for the employee and they're low end users, there may be a better solution for them.
So can I just say that back, because I want to make sure I understand what you just said, is that on group plans, what you see most frequently is that the employer is contributing some portion of the employee's coverage cost. So like just to make up numbers, if it was $1,000 a month for just the employee, maybe the employer is paying $500 of that. And then the other amount is the employee's responsibility. But when they add on family members, they're not paying, the employer is not contributing any part for, you know, the spouse and the kids when they get added to the plan. That's what you see most times.
Yes, especially on teacher plans and group plans. I see that all the time.
So the coverage could be really good for the employee in terms of pricing, but then when they start adding family members on, it changes the dynamics of how much of that coverage they're holding. So if there's a particularly comprehensive plan that's going to cover everything, adding on the children and the spouse might make it unaffordable.
Exactly. And because it's coming out of their paycheck, a lot of times people don't think about it or they're not looking at it. So right. I like to say that insurance is kind of like a pair of jeans. We all have our favorite pair of jeans and we may be able to wear them from the style perspective for a year or two, but you should always be reviewing that. Just like your jeans, you would change those out.
So how often though?
I want to go back real quick. I'm sorry. I actually do think this is really important because I think most of us make the assumption that if we can get group coverage, that that coverage is going to be the cheapest and the most comprehensive for our family. I mean, I think that's a pretty normal assumption to make, but what I heard you just say is that it might not be the case. Like there might be a way to get similar coverage that's less expensive by looking individually. And I find that to just be so interesting because most of the time you hear it the other way. I need to get off an individual plan onto a group.
So I can
Right.
get better
Group's gonna
benefits and
be-
better network and everything.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to like underline that maybe a little bit because I think it's so counterintuitive to the way we're taught to think about health insurance.
Well, this is what's happening is you've got more and more people that are exiting the corporate jobs that they have, and more entrepreneurs, people are going out on their own and starting their own thing. A lot of those can't afford group insurance or don't realize they can afford group insurance. And so with the corporate plans, it's good to evaluate at open enrollment, whatever the open enrollment is for your group, you know, what those costs are. And it's not magic, it's just math. So you just have to go through the math and look at how you're using your health insurance. What are your health concerns? You know, what are your risks? So it's a holistic view that you have to take. And I would recommend doing that every year, just like you would your property and casualty and your car insurance.
So do you think some of that thought process, and I'm sorry, I'm going way off on a tangent here, but it's because I think this is interesting. And I think there are some parallels to the way we look at things, is that when people kind of started, most people, when they had to think about health insurance and that sort of thing, individual plans could exclude certain things from coverage if you had pre-existing conditions, all that kind of stuff. So the only way to make sure that regardless of your health, everything was covered, all of that happened inside of that group space. And now because the regulations have changed, it seems to me like individual coverage is maybe forced to be more comprehensive than it used to be. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, so in 2014, when Obamacare came about, their requirements from a very high level was that they cover pre-existing conditions in addition to maternity, abortion, drug rehab, and mental health. And then there's a prescription drug component in there. When those things came about, your group insurance and your marketplace plans all fell under that. But there are non-traditional plans that are out there that don't fall under the guidelines of an ACA, and they're intentionally designed to be that way. They have risks. They're not perfect, nor are the major medical or the group plans that are out there right now, because let's face it, those companies are wanting to be profitable. And so they make changes with the deductibles, the co-insurance, and your premiums. And so you may actually be getting less coverage in those plans than you could in a non-traditional plan that isn't covering pre-X. So it's worth looking at and exploring and educating the person on the other end in terms of what the risks are and what the potential opportunities are from a math perspective, because many times I've been able to save families $600-700 a month. That's huge to a family's bottom line. I mean, people are paying $1,600 for their plans out there, and they're getting very little coverage. They're paying everything out of pocket. So, you know, you just have to do the math with them.
So how are you able to do that? Sorry, Eric. I'm sorry. I'm like hijacking all the questions. You can tell me to stop. It's just that every time she says something, I'm like, wait a minute, how can you do that?
So if you look at their plan and you look at their health, you can take a look at non-traditional options and come up with a good deductible and do the math in terms of what it is. I can look at indemnity options. I can look at short-term options. Sometimes it's worth us looking at the marketplace and see if the marketplace is better than what they have right now. So it's just evaluating what they have now, how they're using it, what their cost is, and doing the math with them. So we spend a lot of time on the front end doing these exercises to determine if we're really going to be putting them in a better situation or not. Because the last thing I want to do as an agent for my reputation is put them in a worse situation.
So there's an oft repeated phrase in my house that I think I have been the purveyor of, but I hate with a passion, is you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. And I hate that phrase. It's good for my kids because it gets them to shut up and leave me alone, but I hate it. because I think that's the phrase that we keep sort of dragging on. I mean, it's momentum, it's everything else in life, right? We talk about it with financial planning, we talk about everything, but I think nowhere is that phrase more apropos than on the health insurance side. Because I've been in those meetings, and the meeting is me and my wife, and she goes, all right, Eric, we've got these two options. Which one do you want? And I'm like, well, they both suck. We're like, well, you got to pick one, right? And then we go to the next phrase in that little questionnaire or whatever we go through online, right? Okay, you've got these two options. Which one do you want of this one, right? And it's health and vision and dental and all the other sort of stuff of it. But it's like I'm picking between the worst of, or the better of two worst options. But I think we do that because we don't know. We didn't know that there was a third way to go do it, or a seventh way to go do it.
Right.
And we didn't know that it was customizable. We thought this is just what you do.
Yeah, and I lost my train of thought, but with people leaving the business, the corporate world, now you've got companies that are developing plans that are more in tune with that self-employed person or that individual that needs coverage for that period of time, whether it's a gap period in between when they get another job, or whether it's a turning 65 and going on Medicare, or if it's just looking for a more affordable solution. I mean, I have a lot of people that I talk to today that are more homeopathic in nature. And so they don't typically go to a doctor. They're using chiropractic and functional medicine and other means to take care of their health, to stay healthy. So there are plans out there that actually give them coverage for those kind of things. So it's, again, just important to customize exactly what that person's looking for in their coverage, and then being able to offer them a solution is really exciting.
And then what does that mean to be in a group? Like if it's Mary and I that are hanging out and we launch some sort of underwater basket weaving training company and it's just the two of us, does that count as a group, or what does that mean?
So if you're an LLC and there are two people participating in your LLC, or if you have a partnership, then you are a qualified group in the state of Texas. And most states will accept two people as long as they're what they consider a qualified group. And that means that you either have to share in the revenue of your company through that partnership or be shown in the LLC. And then we can look at different options for groups. We have traditional options in groups like the Blue Cross Blue Shields, the Humanas, the Aetnas. And then we also have non-traditional, which are still major medical plans, and they cover the things that people are concerned with, but they're called level funded plans. And so typically those plans are going to be about 40% less in premium. They may be expanding the network, so they don't have to stay in the Blue Cross Blue Shield, United, Aetna network. They can expand into any network. So it just depends on the plan and what's a good fit for that group. Again, it's just evaluating how they're using their insurance and what's the best fit for them. Some of those plans are underwritten, so they have to qualify for them.
Right.
But if you have somebody who has really good health and no pre-existing conditions, going through a qualifier may make sense because the carrier is more willing to take them on at less cost because of how their health looks.
Absolutely.
And there's almost an incentive for being healthy in some of those plans.
Yeah, when you're in overall good health, you have lots of options to consider. The other thing I'll point out, which is a hot button for me, and that is a lot of times you have group plans and people are taking medications and they're paying a copay for those plans. Nothing makes me more crazy than for people to not understand that they have options. So one of the things that I educate people about is going to GoodRx, or there's about 4 or 5 different apps out there, but GoodRx is the best. And looking at what the cost of your medication is, because many times people are paying a copay that costs more than what their medication actually costs. So I get so excited when somebody says, oh, I'm paying $20 or paying $30, and they could be paying $4. So it's just, again, it's just an education process to help them look at what pharmacies they go to, what medications they take, what are you paying right now? What could you be paying? And they're like, oh, wow. So I love that part.
Yeah, I mean, I was laughing, but only because I would never have thought that the copay would be more than the medication itself. Like, that's just not something that would have occurred to me.
Yeah.
Right. Everything's got to be more expensive than $20.
Right. And people think they're getting a deal. That's the crazy part.
Yeah, I mean, you assume, right? But again, I think this goes to like the way we're conditioned to think about this is that there are certain expectations. And if I have a copay, that means someone else is paying the rest of it, even though the way they may be funding someone else's more expensive medication is because lots of people are overpaying for theirs, right? It's a profit center that way, especially if then, the insurance carrier is the one that's like, oh, well, we won't pay for the brand name. We're pushing you to generic because then they're making the margin on it. This is fascinating to me. I mean, like I'm sure anyone listening is like, of course they're doing that, but it's not something that we consciously think about.
Yeah, but it's like an actuarial science exercise, right? It's like car insurance. Like somebody's going to run into a Maserati tomorrow and there's 500 other people that are not going to have an accident this year that are paying for that guy's Maserati, right? And it's some pill is going to be $1,000 a pop or whatever the number is. I don't even know, but and then somebody's overpaying for they could have had the pill for $4.
One of the things I love about the goodrx.com app is that you can, if you scroll down, you can actually look at manufacturer's coupons. So for some reason you are taking a more expensive medication, you can scroll down and use the manufacturer's coupons. And then if it's real expensive, you can scroll down further and there's typically a patient assistance program through that manufacturer that you may qualify for free medication or a subsidy on that medication. So it really doesn't matter what your income is. I would always say to apply for that and see what you can get. So some people are taking today medications like Vyvanse, which is considered a tier 4 drug in some of the plans. And what that means is it's just more expensive. So it's a $315 drug. If you go through GoodRx, you may be able to get a manufacturer's coupon that will reduce it, or the patient assistance, which could either pay for it or reduce it significantly based on your circumstances. So a lot of people don't realize that's out there too.
Well, and I think one of the things that I have found interesting, Vyvanse is an ADHD or ADD drug, right? Am I correct in that? So I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine who started at a new company, and the medication that he was taking for ADHD was no longer covered. So the new company he went to, their plan didn't cover it. So in that circumstance, if he wanted to continue taking it, it would have made sense for him to go to that GoodRx and maybe talk to the manufacturer to see how that would affect it, right? Because I think sometimes, I remember having this conversation with him. He switched to the new plan and was like, well, I got to go and see. He's like, this is the best thing I've ever taken for that. And now I've got to go figure something else out that probably won't be as effective because it's not covered. Whereas had he just had a conversation with you, and this conversation was probably, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, but it came to my mind because he was like, well, this is great. Now I got to go have all these extra doctor's visits and get new diagnoses and then try out different medications when really there are other options.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you just didn't know. That's the thing, right? You
didn't
know the question to ask.
It's so big and it's so complicated, and there are so many choices, and it's all, technical speak. Sometimes I think it's really hard to figure out unless you have a resource that can just say, look, I'll make this crystal clear for you. Here's a better choice, and here's how you could accomplish that. But, if you don't do it all day, every day, you don't know what you can or can't get away with. So are there any particular things that you do? I'm not asking for trade secrets necessarily, but things that change the client experience. So someone comes to you, what might they get with you that they wouldn't get from, I'm going to say, a normal health insurance agent or broker?
Well, as a broker, what that really means to you as the individual is I have access to multiple plans. And so I'm licensed to offer multiple plans, whether it's group or individual, and I have in review individual plans that come out all the time. So when I'm reviewing those plans, the things that I look at are, what is their rating like for customer service? And if I sell this plan, am I going to be getting issues back from a customer service perspective? And then what's the coverage? So I know what the averages are for hospital stays. I know what the averages are for doctor visits. I know that information. And so if the plan has those weaknesses, it's not that I might not sell it. It may be a good fit for somebody because it may have something in there that somebody likes or needs. but I'm going to let them know what the weaknesses are. So we vet those plans basically, and we go through them to make sure that they don't have tremendous risks or weaknesses in the plan. And if they do, we make sure to point that out. So as a broker, you get that we're looking through the plans and we're understanding what that language means. Like, people don't understand what usual and customary means today in major medical plans. Well, usual and customary, what that means is that Medicare had set the standard for that rate. So if it's usual and customary, it's based on the Medicare rate. And if it goes above that, then that's your out-of-pocket cost. So people think, oh, I'm covered, that I have everything and I'm covered. But if it's above usual and customary, you are not covered.
Yeah,
and
it's
you
your problem,
are going
right?
to be paying out-of-pocket. Yeah. So it's just understanding some of those nuances, which you get with us. We spend a lot of time educating again about medications, about places to go and have radiology done, lab work done more affordably. So we spend a lot of time with our clients, and we're available not just before we write the policy, but after we write the policy. Oftentimes I get involved with claims, and so I help them with the process with claims. If I see an EOB, an explanation of benefits, come back and it looks wrong, I will resubmit it to my claims department contact and have them reevaluate it or look at it. So you get that with me as an agent.
Well, and you said something there that you just kind of like skated right past, but it went like ding, ding, ding for me. And so I'm going to go back to that real quick, because you said something about finding places where you can get a lab work, or I think you might have said a procedure, more affordably. And I'm like, wait a minute, you mean it's not the same price everywhere you go? Right? Because if the insurance company is going to say pay the same price everywhere you go, and all those doctors are reliant on the insurance companies to pay their bills, they can just arbitrarily decide what they're going to charge for it. And do they have to disclose that on the front end? Hey, we're above market for this particular thing you want.
That's the whole issue with transparency and what they're fighting for in the new laws that are coming out, hopefully in January. But if you're on a bronze group plan, you're paying everything out of pocket until that deductible or co-insurance is met. And so if you have to have radiology, one of my favorite things outside of medications is to show people where they can go to have an MRI, a CT scan, or an X-ray. And so I know in the DFW area that you can go and have an MRI or a CT scan for about $400. So if your plan requires that you pay all of that out of pocket for a co-insurance and meet your deductible, then you are far better utilizing like a radiologyassist.com to get that MRI or CT scan for $400 versus having to meet that $6,000 or $8,000 deductible and co-insurance for that MRI or CT scan. So again, there's places and there's resources that you can use to get things a lot more affordably than people realize.
But we're not taught to be shoppers on health insurance.
Nope.
That's the thing.
We're not, but why not? That's the thing. Yeah.
But it seems so opaque. It seems sort of like this machine and this monstrosity of all these different things. And I think the part that comes in, and I think we face it on the financial planning side as well, is there's fear all of a sudden. And so I think when the fear hits in of like, oh my gosh, this could end badly for me, then you're looking to somebody that has your best interest at heart, but is also trying to make a buck, right? Which right. I don't begrudge them that, but it's like, look here, go to my place. We've got this all set up. It's streamlined. You just do X, Y, or Z, and it takes that thing off of your brain from having to go think about it. But you're maybe not making the best choice financially.
Right. And people are used to the days when you gave a card and you paid a copay. I had babies for $10, and I thought that was a lot back in the day. Now
they cost at least 10 grand now. Just
at least
out there.
People don't understand that. They say, I want a plan that covers maternity. And I'm like, okay, let's talk about coverage, because that looks very different. If you're self-pay, depending upon where you deliver and what doctor you use, you can have a baby for $5,500, maybe to $7,500 if you use a more expensive facility. Whereas on your plan, you're going to have a copay, co-insurance, and a deductible, and you're going to meet all of those to have that baby. So you're definitely looking at over $12,000 typically to have that baby. So
Okay, so I'm going to ask one more question real quick, and this is not on the baby side, but I think it might be relevant here because I remember when I had my first baby that I had my group plan, which sounds very much like you described. There's a certain out-of-pocket maximum that you have to hit before it starts covering everything, and that number was pretty high. But I remember talking to somebody at the time who did some supplemental type of insurance. And we were able to stack probably, I don't know, I mean, this was 10 years ago, so I don't even know if you can still do something like this, but we were able to stack a couple of supplemental policies together. And I actually got a check. When you look at combined everything, the way it was happening, I received a check that was more than what I had to pay out of pocket. So I actually, even including the premium, I actually made a profit when I had my first baby. And the idea of doing
Let's have lots.
Yeah, let's keep going. All the money, except they're so expensive on the back end.
Yeah.
But are there things that you can do like that still today? The ability to maybe combine multiple things to either create different benefits or make things more affordable without just having your premium go through the roof?
Yep, absolutely. So if you're under the situation with your group plan, you don't have any other options, and you have to choose a high deductible, you can do gap options for groups. You can also do gap for individual, and then you can also stack supplemental things like accident coverage, catastrophic coverage. So if something happens accident-wise, you can get that additional, you can double indemnify basically, or double dip on your benefits. So if you have a deductible that you have to meet, and your accident coverage is covering all of that, and so now you have a $50 deductible versus a $5,000 or $6,000 deductible, that policy could then pay you back all of that. So you're not only getting the benefit from the major medical plan, but then you're getting the money on the back end. So those benefits can be coordinated, or you can be self-pay and submit the claims and get reimbursed either way. So great question.
Yeah, I think this has been really helpful at least for me. I feel like I learned something in this. I'm sure our listeners have too. Is there anything that you want to add that we didn't ask you that you think people need to know off the top of your head?
I think, insurance is not very sexy. It's not something most people want to dive into. So
right.
All I would say is that there's no cost to me reviewing the plan that you have and having a discussion with you. So I invite you to look at the current plan that you're on and see if there's something better. That's for over 65 or under 65. And, again, there are so many new plans that are coming out there all the time that it's worth, looking into to see if your group options are the best options or your individual options are the best options. So we can look at all of that for you. I appreciate the time today.
Yeah, well, it's all about being creative, I think, is sort of the takeaway for me. And I have to tell you, there's a 13-year-old boy running around in my brain that every time you say major medical, I picture a duck in the background dancing. And I can't help but giggle in the back of my brain every time you say that. So just the ability to keep this under control the last 20 minutes has been monumental.
So KJ, how can people find you if they have questions?
They can reach out to me at 469-899-3917. They can go on my website and complete the form, which is confidential and secure on the back end, and that will have all of the pertinent information that I need in order to run any quotes or options. And my website will have my calendar link as well. So it should be pretty easy to find me.
And what is your website?
Oh, I'm sorry. yourforeveragency.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining today.
Thanks,
really enjoyed having you on board. If you're looking for me, you can find me at The Wealth Woman on Facebook or Instagram. Eric, what about you?
And on Facebook and Instagram at Economics with Eric.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, KJ.
Thanks, guys.